Good morning once again, and thank you for staying tuned to Sunrise at Sea here on CTV. Welcome to our Twitter Jabs too. My name is Agi Owase, and we are continuing the conversation that we had on our Twitter Jabs 1, and we are deliberating on the matter of the controversial deal signed, the controversial coffee deal signed by the government of Uganda and the Vinci Coffee Company. Now, to give you a little bit of information once again, this deal was signed by the Minister of Finance, the Ugandan Minister of Finance, Kasaijasigned, on behalf of the government of Uganda, and was witnessed by the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and that is Ramadan Gobi. And on the side of the Uganda Vinci Coffee Company, it was signed by Ms Enrica pinetti, and also witnessed by the secretary to the Treasury of the Uganda Vinci Coffee Company, and that is Moses Matovu. Well, this particular conversation has caused a lot of uproar on social media, with Ugandans having different opinions, asking what are we benefiting from this deal in regard to the incentives that are in this deal, which one of them is that the company will be exempted from taxes whatsoever. And if we are to backtrack a little bit, the Ministry of Finance has said that this is the best deal ever, but also again, Ms. Pinetti, Enrica Pinetti, was involved in the deal of the construction of the Lubowa International Specialized Hospital, but the same has since stalled. So that is why Ugandans have a lot of questions. Well, joining me at the center of this conversation to deliberate much more on this matter is Ms. Brenda Akankunda Owase, and she's from the she's a trade and investment policy analyst at CNT Uganda, and that is Southern and East African Trade Information and Negotiations Institute, which is a non-governmental organization. Good morning, Ms. Brenda.
Good morning, and I'm glad to be on this show.
Yes, thanks for joining us, and thank you for coming to deliberate on this matter. So, to actually kickstart the conversation, I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts on this Uganda Vinci Coffee deal?
Thank you, Wase, for that question. First of all, to highlight is that what we've always seen, or the prevailing economic model that we've always had in Uganda as far as this is concerned,
yes,
has actually over time been failing. And this is mainly because it is geared towards, profit making for a certain small group of people. So
yes,
when we see such a contract in place, it is more of a justification to what has been existing and the model that we've been using, and we think that it has not come in to solve that particular problem, but rather to supplement to it. But also to take you back, I think it is imperative that we get to understand, first of all, the major challenges pre-existing, yes, within along the coffee value chain. Yes. And now that this deal comes in, what we think, or what would ideally, what it would be to help or solve those particular problems. Mm-hmm. At Siatini, we have a project that is tabbed Fair for All, improving the coffee value chains in Uganda. And through that project, we've usually engaged with the coffee farmers, especially, who get to share their plight and some of the challenges that they face. So I think it's important that we get to, analyze those challenges, but also tag along this particular contract and see, like Ministry of Finance puts it out there,
yes,
if it comes in place to solve those particular challenges. Challenges to do with access to market, quality, access to inputs, mm-hmm, and dealing with the middlemen that have oftentimes cheated the farmers at a small scale. But for us in our analysis, we think that, first of all, the agreement itself is, it contains some of clauses that I would term ambiguous.
Yes.
Especially since they are not clear, or they are unjustifiable. I would highlight maybe to do with the tax exemptions, mm-hmm, whereas we do understand that for you to be able to attract investments, over time we'll be seeing certain incentives having to be put in place. But then when you look at a clause that says tax incentives for the existing laws and those that will be put in place, yes, and then government makes an obligation to pay in case this company is to incur any taxes,
Yes.
it becomes ambiguous in nature. And not just ambiguous, this would be the right time where I would see government engaging Parliament and the different stakeholders before reaching such an agreement, because this includes public finance. And when you cross-check with the principles governing public finance management, equity and transparency should be very key. But here you look at an agreement that was just signed internally within one ministry, and the rest left out. But also, why I would say it's ambiguous in a way is there's lack of that, I would say, policy or institutional coherence, because whereas investment agreements are to be signed by Ministry of Finance, we do understand that coffee, here we're talking about an agricultural product. So now more than ever is a time when we would see Ministry of Agriculture having a say. We have an agency that is strictly working on coffee, which is UCDA. This is a time where we should have seen UCDA on board. In fact, it should probably be UCDA out there that is defending this particular agreement.
Yes.
But we are not seeing that. Parliament is also has also not been consulted. We saw the Solicitor General yesterday also saying that he has nothing to do with this particular bill. So that itself shows the lack of that coherence. But also, on the other side of it is, it's important that we get to, do certain audits, because like you mentioned in the start, Wase, is we know that this particular investor has been in place. She has been trusted with a certain contract.
Yes.
But she has not been able to deliver
till this
as
day.
per the obligations made in the contract. And this being looked at by Ugandans as an addition, in fact, raises a lot of questions. And I know that is why a lot of people have come out to, point out and say, how is this possible?
Beneficial.
Because
yes.
for us as citizens, we want to see that public accountability. We want that audit to be carried out and then say, we have this investor, this is what they've done previously, and this is what we think that awarding them this contract will be able to solve. For me, I think all those remain unanswered. What other thing we've seen is, I do understand, yeah, we need the investors in place, but usually we tend to give out a lot of incentives. Like for this particular agreement, this particular investor is given land. They are awarded a lot of tax exemptions. Yet, most instances, what we see is that all these and the obligations made usually tend to just protect the investor themselves. But for us as Siatini, we believe in a life before profit campaign, where we say that whereas we need investments in place, yes, it is very important that we prioritize the rights of the citizens, yes, the rights of the communities. And when we talk about this particular agreement, that is where it is very key for us to talk about the small-scale farmers, because they are the majority in terms of coffee production and in the entire coffee value chain within Uganda. So we want to find out, have they been consulted, because they are the key players in this particular section. I think a lot of the farmers we've engaged with will tell you they don't even have an idea. They don't even have an idea of the Coffee Act itself that we have in place. So you don't even expect them to know about this particular agreement. And yes, because of those gaps, you'll always hear a lot of voices coming out. I think, whereas I've seen some government officials like the PSST coming out to justify, it's important that even when called upon in such spaces, they come out and speak about it and try to justify, so that the good side maybe of the bill could be, realized to the citizens and the public, but also the criticism that arises out of this particular bill. For me, I think there are particular issues that could be addressed, because it is true we need investments.
Yes, we do.
But then we also need to focus and see, is this the kind of investment that we need?
Is it beneficial
does it come in? Yeah, does it come in to solve the problems that we are facing along the value chain? Because like I told you, when we engage with these farmers, they share with us what their problems are. But when we see a coffee processing plant being set up, it is a good idea. But then our questions are, what is the next step? Have we prepared maybe markets? Because one other challenge is that we are told that there is no market actually for value-added coffee. So here what we are talking about is value addition, because we are saying we are processing the coffee. But have we prepared the market, or what is the next step? I hope we don't have to reach a time where we see that yes, we have the coffee, we've added value, but then we don't have where to sell our coffee, which has been also one of the challenges that we face.
Yes. And also the Parliament of Uganda has summoned the Ministry of Finance, and they will be coming in Parliament in May to answer questions in regard to this deal, and also, you know, give more information or more insight, especially to the public. And also the coffee farmers will be convening anytime soon to also deliberate on this matter and also get to understand how does it benefit them in one way or another. So from your perspective, I would like your opinion actually. Do you think there's any red flags that we need to worry about as Ugandans, as coffee farmers? Are there red flags that we need to worry about in this deal, in regard to this deal?
There definitely are red flags, a lot of them, because I want to highlight some of them. One, looking at the point that we start with, the point of the investor in question here is, that is very key actually, because like I said, when we don't carry out those audits, or let me say a background check, and then we already worried because of the Lubowa incident, and now we see the same person. So I think for me that is a red flag that needs justification or clarification from government. Two, I think that the incentives awarded are quite ambiguous. So that itself also raises some questions. Why would government commit to remit taxes in case they come up? I understand the bit of the tax incentives, but then I think it has also been exaggerated in a way of government committing to pay even the other taxes that may come up. Three, looking at this agreement, for me, I don't find it talk about the arbitration itself. And anyone who understands the legal aspects understands that you cannot make an agreement where you don't prepare for in case any dispute arises. So that is something we've not seen, and that too raises a bit of red flags, because ideally it makes the contract null and void. So for me, I think there are very many red flags, but also most importantly the fact that it does not address challenges faced by the farmers. There's a point where it talks about the investor being able to sell the coffee at a premium price. But the question is, what amounts to a premium price? I think there should have been a clear justification on maybe what is that premium price that they talk about. But all those particular ones, I think for me raise
red flags.
The red flags that you ask about. Okay,
you earlier mentioned that coffee farmers in Uganda have no idea about this entire deal. Now, based on your engagement with some of the stakeholders in the coffee business and the farmers as well, how is their reception to this deal? Are they welcoming it? Are they raising questions to you? What are they talking about this deal?
For me, what I find is worry. Most of them have this worry where they feel that this agreement creates a monopoly in a way that coffee is now centered to just one person, meaning that most of them will have to be left out in this particular one. I think it is something that actually government needs to come out and maybe speak out to the farmers, and then ensure them that this comes to, maybe to support them or to help the particular farmers, because what is there, and which is actually a fact, is we have liberalized, yes, which is good, but then when we see such an agreement, it creates an economic, I want to say a monopoly, in a way that coffee is entrusted in the hands of one person.
Yes.
Meaning that this is a person who will actually be able to maybe determine the prices, to be able to dictate what exactly they want. And definitely that has to be worrying for the farmers.
Yes, and also I would like to know from you, do you think that it's the right time that government ventures into deep sensitization, say go down to the coffee farmers in those villages in Bundibujo, in Kasese, where coffee is produced, and rather where coffee is planted and produced as well. So do you think that this is a time that government should dive into sensitization so that the coffee farmers get to understand how this deal will be beneficial to them, and in case they have any alms, or concerns, that would be the right time for them to raise them to the right person, because it's the government of Uganda that signed, the deal?
Yeah, definitely. Sensitization is very key, and I think not just now that this agreement has, been put out there, but as always, it's very important that government continuously engages with the farmers to do these sensitizations. Right from even the Coffee Act that we just put in place last year, most of the farmers do not understand what are the particulars of the Coffee Act that we have. And now we have this coffee agreement that has raised a lot of questions. So I think now more than ever we should see government engaging with the key players who are the farmers down there, so that they get to understand, but also to understand the entire, to have answers to all the questions that cut across the coffee value chain, so that they are able to, understand and also be able to see how they can be, how they can address some of the challenges they face as farmers with that structured dialogue between them and government. And there's actually been an effort, I must say, because usually when you engage with farmers, they'll tell you there's an interaction between them and UCDA, which is Uganda Coffee Development Authority. And even in terms of supporting, they'll tell you, most times we've seen UCDA coming out to give input, to give the seedlings to us as the farmers. But they also have some questions that they raise. So they're like, for instance, UCDA gives us the seedlings, but sometimes they bring the seedlings when it's not the season for planting, so meaning they cannot be able to help us. So I think the structured dialogue needs to continue, and then the sensitization itself.
Okay. Now, we have seen, besides the members of parliament raising their concerns in regard to this deal, we have seen Buganda Kingdom, and especially the Premier, and that is Peter Maiga, came on to talk about this deal and raise his concerns. And he says that it's contradictory to their Buganda Emwanyi Telima deal, And so actually what he said is they are challenged by the coffee controversy, and they contested that the coffee bill will be ridiculed. And they also say this particular deal is hugely questionable. So as Buganda Kingdom, they are raising their concerns. So do you think, in your opinion, that the government of Uganda owes Buganda Kingdom an explanation?
Well, Buganda Kingdom has put out their issues. We've seen Bugisu Cooperative also coming out. We've seen several farmers come out, civil society. So I think it's not just structured to maybe one institution, but it's something that cuts across. So I feel government has made an effort to justify, but it is important that all these key players that you mentioned, including Buganda Kingdom, like you say, should have their questions answered by government. Because I believe that all the different institutions have come out, all that are concerned, to raise their concerns, and they all deserve to be listened to. So I think it's important that they are awarded the attention that they deserve, so that their questions are taken on.
Okay, yes. As we wrap up this conversation, I'd like to ask you, do you think that Uganda is incapacitated when it comes to production of coffee, that this deal had to be given to a foreign company? Do you think Uganda is incapacitated in any way, or coffee farmers in Uganda are incapacitated?
Thank you, Wase, for that question. I think that investment should be looked at broadly, in a sense of us being able to, first of all, promote local investments, but also we cannot underscore the point of having foreign investments in place, because usually why we get to see these foreign investors coming in place is because we as local investors may at certain points not have maybe enough capacity to set up maybe the kind of investments that we would require to see in place. However, for me, I think that in instances where we get to see foreign investors coming in place, which we can't do away with,
yes,
it's important that we advocate for joint ventures, so that when we see these foreign investors coming in place, we have these joint ventures. They could be in forms of maybe PPPs, where we see government working together with the private investor, who is the foreign investor. Because the major worry is usually these foreign investors come into place, they're awarded a lot of incentives in terms of tax exemptions, land, and all the others. And when the tax holiday, like for this particular agreement, which is 10 years, when the tax holiday is done, most of them will either repatriate their profits and go away, or some of them, we've had incidents where a company is awarded tax incentives. When the holiday is done, they now rebrand and more like sell, and then it's a new company, meaning they're going to be awarded new incentives. So for me, I think the best way to respond to that is let's have those joint ventures at all times.
yes,
Where the foreign investor comes in place, because we cannot do away with foreign investments. Let's advocate for more joint ventures. And this is something we've always raised to be included within our investment code, because it's a guiding legal framework for investments in Uganda. Let's see these clauses being put in place. Whereas we do understand that, yeah, maybe for this particular section, we may need foreign investments, but there are also sectors where we feel these ones should be left out for local investors.
yes,
And the other thing we advocate for as Siatini is let's ring fence certain activities for just the local investors, because we cannot talk about industrialization for our country if we do not speak about boosting local production.
yes,
And the only way we can be able to do that is if we leave out certain sectors for just the local investors who are here in Uganda. Because if we open up entirely, means foreign investors will probably have enough capacity, because we also can't underscore that we are a least developed country. And probably we may not have all the resources that we require. The competition will still be high, and then we'll see local investors not getting a chance to compete in the markets that we have in place.
Okay, and finally, I'd like you to give us your final remarks in regard to this deal as we wait for the deliberation from Parliament, because they have summoned the Ministry of Finance. So as we wait for that deliberation, what are your final remarks on this matter?
Thank you very much. For me, I think this agreement comes in at a time where we've seen a lot of stakeholders along the coffee value chain coming out to share their particular plight and the challenges that they face. I think it's so important that government puts that into consideration and looks at how we can be able to resolve such challenges, but also to boost and improve the entire value chain. But in so doing, to make sure that in whatever we do, it is fair for all. Like I said, it is a campaign we run at Siatini, so that it's not just one-sided, but the farmers are able to benefit, the investor is able to benefit, and the government is also able to benefit in terms of collecting the revenue that should be collected from such investments.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Brenda Akankunda Owase, for joining us on Sunrise at CNC TV.
Thank you for hosting me.
Well, there you have it, and that wraps up our conversation that we had on our Twitter Jabs today, and that has been Ms. Brenda Akankunda Owase, who is a trade and investment policy analyst at CNTini Uganda, which is a non-governmental organization. But do not go anywhere. Sunrise at Sea continues. Don't blink.